Thank you very much, Lascan Corla. I think the simplicity of this motion typifies the Sinn Féin approach to economics and economic policy. We're constantly left with the prospect of Sinn Féin coming in with emotion and fantasy versus an actual plan or reality that we're in. I think sometimes it's necessary to take stock of where the economy is and just what this country has gone through. We've had the collapse of an entire economic sector of society in the construction industry, one in 6 of which jobs were dependent on it at its height, which has led to huge unemployment. We have a heap of debt hanging around the neck of the country as a result of reckless and dangerous banking policies and a Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin supported bank guarantee. We have a crippling effect that has resulted in the state finances and the ability of the state to pay its bills and to pay its way, which has resulted in the necessity of external lenders coming into this state to fund our services, to fund our public services, and to keep us afloat. And on top of that, we have a global economic crisis that is not lifting and continues to reign. And we also have a recession in the Eurozone. And on top of that, we have a crisis of confidence in the future and the very existence of the Eurozone currency itself, the so-called debt crisis and currency crisis. All of these issues are weighing on top of our tiny, small country as a very heavy burden and is weighing severely. And all of these issues have to be dealt with one by one. And that is what the government is doing. But let's get real here. We don't have complete and utter sovereignty over our economic matters. We work inside the European Union with a common currency, where over years we have shared sovereignty, shared responsibility, and shared control of our economic policy. And there are other people involved in paying for the bailout that we're in at the moment. People who are putting billions of euro out of their economies into the programme. And what they want is to make sure that the money they put in doesn't simply drag on the problem in the Eurozone, but actually solves it. And this treaty, what it tries to do, is to repair a design flaw in the currency to make sure that the problems we got to now, with excessive debt, runaway spending, don't happen again. But what Sinn Féin forget is that that is in our interest. The euro is not just something that's in the mainland Europe. It is the currency that is in our pockets. It's the currency that our businesses use. It's what we have our savings in. It's what we get paid in. It is our currency too, and we are inextricably linked to the survival of the euro. Maybe it's because it's their speechwriters that get paid in sterling that they can't make this connection. I'd like to say that it's interesting how the recent announcement of the government, by the government on the renegotiation of the promissory note for this year has been treated with such cynicism and derision by Sinn Féin. It's clearly a positive step, just as the reduction in the interest rate was, just as the renegotiation of the minimum wage was, just as the jobs initiative was, and just as the renegotiation of the asset disposal policy was. All positive steps, never acknowledged, never given credit, and never even given a small round of applause. Finally, Lascan Corla, I want to pick up on a point made by Deputy Mayor Lou MacDonald this morning during Leader's questions. She was criticising the lack of detail on the promissory note, despite being told that the negotiations have not yet concluded. And she said, which of the cutbacks, Taoiseach, will you roll back on? This is a constant argument that we have from Sinn Féin, and one of which I take on local radio in Galway and in the chamber here. The complete refusal of Sinn Féin to acknowledge that on top of our banking policy and our banking debts, there is a fiscal crisis of our current spending and in our current account is shameful. I have seen it on local radio where they will talk about the paying back of Anglo bondholders, refuse to mention that it's not coming from the state, that it won't have an effect on anybody for 10 years' time, and and they're saying that they could easily reverse cuts, change policy if this payment wasn't happening. The same happened this morning with the promissory note, that if we didn't pay back this, we would have 3.1 billion euro extra. It's not true. We would have 3.1 billion euro extra that we would not have to borrow and put into our national debt. And this kind of fake argument where they're treating people like idiots, they're manipulating them, they're trying to stir up anxiety, and they're trying to create a sense of unfairness that's simply not there. The times are tough. People know that. The public are suffering. But to have heaped upon that a level of manipulation and arrogance by a party that is simply seeking electoral gain and electoral growth is something that is deeply cynicism. And when the history books are written on this, and people look back at the greatest economic crisis this state has ever felt, they will look back with scorn on the Sinn Féin party for the level of cheap politics they played during a time of such national crisis. Thank you, Lascan Corla.